Welcome back, everyone, to the Deep Dive. Today, we're diving into the world of digital transformation.
Ooh, exciting.
It is, but we're going beyond the hype and really focusing on the human element.
The human element. Okay.
Yeah, we'll be exploring an insightful LinkedIn article titled Digital Transformation. It's still all about people.
I like that title.
It's written by El-Tonsy, an HR digital transformation leader who brings a really interesting perspective.
So are we ditching the TikTok and going full-on touchy-feely?
Not exactly. It's more about understanding how people and technology intersect in this whole transformation process.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Where do we start?
Well, right off the bat, El-Tonsy uses this term, Technofetishism.
Technofetishism?
Yeah, to describe this almost blind faith in technology as the answer to everything.
Ah, I've definitely seen that. Just buy the newest software and all your problems will disappear.
Exactly. But he argues that simply throwing money at the latest tech won't magically lead to positive change.
It's like expecting a car to drive itself without, a skilled driver.
That's a great analogy. He actually uses that in the article. Have you seen this technofetishism play out in your own work?
Oh, absolutely. It's tempting to think a new system is a magic bullet.
Right. But it rarely works out that way.
It's a trap a lot of companies fall into. They get so fixated on acquiring the shiniest new tech that they forget the human element.
Human element, yeah.
The training, the adaptation, the cultural shifts that are needed for technology to actually work.
It's not enough to just install the software and hope for the best.
Exactly. El-Tonsy actually mentions this example of a manufacturing company.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they invested a ton in automation but didn't properly prepare their employees.
And what happened?
Resentment, fear, a drop in productivity. It's a cautionary tale for any company approaching digital transformation.
So if technology alone isn't enough, what is? El-Tonsy makes a surprising argument about the role of HR in all of this.
HR? That's interesting.
I know, right? I was a bit taken aback when he said that HR often gets sidelined during digital transformations.
Sidelined, really?
Relegated to administrative tasks, the paperwork and logistics.
I can see how that happens, but it seems like a missed opportunity.
Exactly. What are your thoughts on that?
It might seem counterintuitive, but when you think about it, HR professionals really understand a company's culture.
They're the ones interacting with employees day in and day out.
They know how people feel, what their fears and aspirations are, how they'll likely react to change.
So instead of just processing payroll, they're actually in a unique position to guide this change process.
Exactly. El-Tonsy sees HR as a driving force, challenging and inspiring the workforce to adapt and embrace new ways of working.
It's about moving beyond those administrative tasks and becoming strategic partners, right?
Absolutely. They can bridge the gap between leadership's vision for digital transformation and the reality on the ground.
That makes a lot of sense. One thing that really resonated with me in the article was El-Tonsy's focus on adaptability.
Adaptability. Yeah, that's crucial in today's world.
He argues it's not just a nice-to-have skill, but an absolute necessity.
Things are changing so fast, you have to be able to adapt or get left behind.
But he also says true adaptability doesn't come from blindly accepting every new technology or trend.
Oh, interesting. So what does he suggest?
He talks about fostering a culture of healthy skepticism.
Healthy skepticism. That sounds a bit like a paradox.
I know, right? How can skepticism be healthy, especially when we're trying to get people to embrace change?
Yeah, I'm curious to hear your take on this.
Well, I think what he's saying is that healthy skepticism isn't about negativity or resistance to change.
So it's not about saying no to everything new.
Exactly. It's about encouraging people to question the status quo.
Both the old ways of doing things and the shiny new solutions, right?
Precisely. It's about critically evaluating those new initiatives, not just accepting them at face value.
So instead of just saying, okay, we're doing this now, people can ask questions, point out potential issues.
Exactly. He's suggesting that when people feel empowered to question things, they're more likely to buy into the change.
It makes them feel like they're part of the process, not just pawns in someone else's game.
I think that's a really powerful point. It's not about stifling dissent, it's about encouraging it.
It seems counterintuitive, but it makes sense. A company that embraces healthy skepticism is likely to be more innovative.
It keeps them from becoming complacent, always looking for ways to improve.
El-Tonsy believes that constructive criticism, not blind acceptance, is crucial for successful digital transformation.
And this brings us to another interesting point he makes. The power of empathy in leadership.
Empathy. We hear that word a lot these days.
I know, right? But it's not always clear what that looks like in practice.
It's more than just being nice to people.
Right. Exactly. El-Tonsy argues that empathy is often undervalued, especially during times of change, which can be unsettling.
People are naturally resistant to change. It can create anxiety and fear.
He says that empathetic leaders acknowledge those feelings, creating trust by listening to and understanding employees' concerns.
So it's about recognizing that people are going through a process, not just expecting them to switch gears overnight.
He even goes as far as to say that empathy is a form of currency and a more valuable one than any technology.
Wow, that's a powerful statement.
He's suggesting that empathy earns a leader trust and loyalty, which leads to a more engaged workforce.
It's not about command and control. It's about creating a supportive and collaborative environment.
And of course, HR plays a crucial role in fostering this empathy within an organization.
They can model it in their own interactions and incorporate it into leadership development programs.
Shifting from a top-down approach to a more human-centered one.
It's about acknowledging that people are at the heart of any successful transformation.
Now, El-Tonsy doesn't shy away from the more challenging aspects of digital transformation either.
What do you mean?
He uses this really evocative phrase, ghosts in the machine.
Ghosts in the machine.
It refers to the hidden issues that can surface during the transformation process.
Like what kinds of issues?
Things like resistance to change, poor communication, silos between departments, a lack of accountability.
Those are the things that can really derail any initiative.
Exactly. And technology alone can't solve those problems.
So what does El-Tonsy suggest we do about these ghosts?
He believes HR needs to take a proactive role in confronting them head-on.
That can be tough, especially if it means challenging existing power structures or ingrained ways of working.
It might involve having difficult conversations about company culture or advocating for structural changes.
It's about acknowledging that digital transformation isn't just about the technology. It's about addressing the human dynamics.
It's easy to get so focused on the technical aspects that we forget about the human element.
The human element, it always comes back to that.
It's a crucial insight. El-Tonsy reminds us that technology is just a tool, and it's the people who ultimately determine its success.
It's like giving someone a fancy new hammer, but if they don't know how to use it, they're not going to build anything worthwhile.
And this brings us to another important point. The fallacy of one-size-fits-all solutions.
The idea that there's a single blueprint for digital transformation that will work for every company.
El-Tonsy cautions against that. He says context is everything.
It's tempting to think there's a magic formula, but what works for one company might be disastrous for another.
He stresses the need to understand the unique dynamics of each organization.
Their culture, their history, their people.
So instead of blindly following some predetermined plan, companies need to tailor their approach.
It's about being flexible, adaptable, recognizing there's no single right way to do this.
And that leads us to the question of how we measure success.
Is it just about the numbers, or are there other factors to consider?
That's where El-Tonsy challenges another common assumption. While metrics like productivity and ROI are important,
You can't ignore the bottom line, right?
he argues that we often get too fixated on the quantifiable data.
So what does he propose we focus on?
Qualitative metrics. Things like employee sentiment, their level of trust in leadership, their willingness to embrace new challenges.
Those are harder to measure, but arguably more important in the long run.
Exactly. So how do we gather that kind of data?
He suggests using a variety of tools. Anonymous surveys, town hall meetings, informal feedback channels.
It's about actively listening to employees, understanding their concerns.
And using their input to adjust strategies along the way.
It's recognizing that digital transformation isn't just about implementing technology, it's about creating a workplace where people feel valued.
And that brings us to perhaps the most significant takeaway from El-Tonsy's article, his call for HR professionals to lead differently.
Lead differently. I like the sound of that.
What does he mean by that? What does that kind of leadership look like in practice?
It's a provocative statement. He's challenging HR to be true agents of change.
To champion a new way of leading that prioritizes people and their well-being.
But as we'll explore in the next part of our deep dive, this is no easy task.
It requires a deep understanding of human nature, a willingness to challenge the status quo, and a commitment to a future of work that is both human and technologically advanced.
It's about shaping a future where technology empowers people, not replaces them.
It sounds like a fascinating and challenging journey.
It is, and we'll continue exploring it in our next segment, so stay tuned.
Can't wait. So we left off talking about how HR needs to step up and lead differently.
Yeah, I'm still processing that.
It's a bold idea, right? El-Tonsy argues that the biggest roadblock to digital transformation isn't actually the technology.
Really? What is it then?
He calls it a failure of imagination.
Failure of imagination.
He sees leadership clinging to those old familiar structures,
Okay.
hoping that just by using new tools, it'll somehow make the old ways more efficient, but that's not real transformation.
So what is he suggesting?
It requires a complete departure from those comfortable norms. He calls it the courage to lead differently.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Can you unpack that a bit more? What does leading differently actually look like?
He challenges HR professionals to be brave enough to really influence leadership, to embark on a new path, to question those long-held assumptions about work, to really advocate for systems that prioritize people and their potential.
That's a tall order. It sounds like a pretty fundamental shift in thinking.
He acknowledges it's no small feat. It requires diplomacy, persistence, and a strong business case.
A business case.
You need to connect those people-centered strategies to tangible outcomes. It can't just be about being nice.
Right. It has to make sense for the business as a whole.
Exactly. You need to demonstrate how prioritizing people can lead to innovation, greater engagement, ultimately better business results.
Okay, that makes sense. But honestly, where do you even begin if you're talking about transforming mindsets and cultures?
That's a fair question, and it's something a lot of people struggle with. El-Tonsy actually offers a clue when he talks about the human paradox.
The human paradox. Okay, I'm listening.
He points out that, people are complex. We can be resistant to change.
Oh, absolutely.
Yet we're endlessly adaptable. We can be skeptical, but also hopeful. We can be self-interested,
Yeah.
but also capable of incredible collaboration.
It's true. We're a bundle of contradictions, aren't we?
Exactly. So how does this paradox relate to digital transformation?
Good question.
El-Tonsy argues that embracing this complexity, recognizing that people are both the challenge and the opportunity, that's the key to successful transformation.
Instead of trying to, fit everyone into a neat little box.
Exactly. We need to acknowledge and work with that inherent complexity.
And that's where empathy comes in again, right?
Yes. It's about meeting people where they are rather than trying to force them to conform to some predetermined ideal.
I think that's so important, especially in today's workplace.
Yeah.
Recognizing that everyone has something valuable to contribute, even if their perspective is different from ours.
Absolutely. This is what El-Tonsy means when he says digital transformation isn't about eradicating the human touch, but harnessing it.
That's a great way to put it.
Organizations that truly get this, that see their people as their greatest asset, those are the ones that won't just survive change.
They'll thrive because of it.
Exactly. It's inspiring, but I can also imagine some people feeling a little overwhelmed by all of this.
It's a lot to take in.
It requires a real shift in thinking, a real commitment. But thankfully, El-Tonsy doesn't leave us hanging.
Oh, good. What does he offer?
He concludes with a powerful call to action, specifically aimed at HR professionals.
Okay, what does he say?
He urges them to step out of the background and take a more active role in shaping the future of work. He says it's time for HR to lead the charge in creating a culture that empowers critical thinking and honest dialogue.
Wow, that's a huge responsibility, but also an incredible opportunity for HR to step up and show their value.
Absolutely. He also talks about the need to champion empathetic leadership, to remember that people aren't just resources, but individuals with hopes and anxieties.
And that ties back into creating those learning ecosystems we talked about earlier.
Right, where growth and curiosity are encouraged and nurtured. It's about creating a workplace where people feel truly valued, supported, and empowered to learn and grow.
Sounds like a pretty amazing vision for the future of work.
It is. But he also emphasizes that transformation isn't some finite project with a clear end date. It's an ongoing journey.
The road might be a bit bumpy. The destination may even shift along the way.
But if you keep people at the heart of it, the possibilities are limitless.
It's a message of hope and possibility, but he's not sugarcoating the challenges, is he?
No, not at all. He's just reminding us that the magnitude of the challenge is matched by the potential rewards.
Okay.
His closing line is incredibly powerful. For every algorithm or automated routine, there is ultimately an individual whose creative life force and nurturing empathy fuel resilience.
That's beautiful. It really underscores that even in this age of algorithms and AI, it's the human spirit, that ultimately drives progress.
And it highlights the importance of nurturing those uniquely human qualities. Creativity, empathy, resilience.
Those will be even more important as the future of work continues to unfold.
This has been such a rich discussion. It feels like we've only scratched the surface of El-Tonsy's insights.
You're right. There's so much more to unpack here. As we move into the final part of our deep dive, what are some key questions our listeners should be pondering?
One of the most critical questions is this: what are the skills and mindsets that will be truly valuable in this new landscape?
Yeah, if technology is meant to enhance human capability, how do we educate and train people for that future?
Those are great questions. I'd also add, how do we ensure that this transformation benefits everyone, not just a select few?
That's a really important point. We need to be mindful of the potential for this to exacerbate inequalities.
Exactly. We have to be proactive in ensuring everyone has the opportunity to participate in and benefit from this technological revolution.
And maybe on a more personal level, is worth asking ourselves, what role do we want to play in shaping this future? Do we want to just watch it happen or be active participants in creating a future that is both human and technologically advanced?
I love that question. It challenges us to move beyond simply reacting to change and become active agents of transformation, both in our own lives and in the organizations we're part of.
This has been a truly insightful conversation. Thank you for sharing your expertise with us.
My pleasure. These deep dives are always a great reminder of the power of continuous learning and the importance of human connection, even in a digital world. You know, as we wrap up our deep dive into El-Tonsy's article, I keep thinking about all the different angles we've explored.
Yeah, it's been a pretty thought-provoking conversation, hasn't it?
From technofetishism to the importance of empathy.
And the need for healthy skepticism.
Right. And that whole idea of having the courage to lead differently.
It really highlights how digital transformation is about so much more than just implementing some shiny new technology.
It goes much deeper than that. It's about changing how we think about work itself.
And leadership.
And the potential that exists within each individual.
We talked about embracing complexity, about how there's no one-size-fits-all solution.
And the vital role HR can play in shaping this transformation.
Advocating for a more human-centric approach.
But as we wrap up, what's the one key takeaway you'd want our listeners to remember?
That's a good question. For me, it's the importance of continuous learning. This landscape is constantly changing, so we all need to be adaptable and willing to learn new things.
I agree. Digital transformation isn't a one-time event.
It's a journey, an ongoing process.
It demands a shift in mindset.
You have to embrace uncertainty and see change as an opportunity, not a threat.
El-Tonsy's article really pushed me to rethink my own assumptions about digital transformation.
Me too. It's a powerful reminder that technology is ultimately just a tool.
It's up to us to decide how to use that tool in a way that benefits people and organizations.
So as our listeners continue on their own digital transformation journey, what advice would you offer them?
I'd encourage them to stay curious, to ask those tough questions, and don't be afraid to challenge the status quo.
It's a learning process for all of us.
We can learn from each other, from our successes, and even from our failures.
Digital transformation represents an amazing opportunity to create a future of work that is more human, more equitable, and more fulfilling for everyone.
Well said. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the human side of digital transformation.
We hope you found it insightful and inspiring. Remember, this is a conversation that's just beginning. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep sharing your own thoughts and insights with us. Until next time.